Okay, welcome everyone to the latest edition of the SpectrumCast, the Data Resilient SpectrumCast. And I know we've taken a little bit of a hiatus, but I am joined, as always, by my co-host, Randy Arsenault.
Hey.
We have our two subject matter experts, Trisha Jang and Sean Sperry. And today we are joined by Andy Hurt. Now, as you might remember from our last podcast, we talked about how IBM is working on technology partnerships within its data resilience portfolio. And earlier this week, we released an announcement saying we're working with a few business partners, and Cobalt Iron is one of those partners. So Andy, welcome to the program.
Thank you so much for having me. Pleasure to be here and extremely excited about the announcement this week, entering Passport Advantage and partnering closer with IBM moving forward for data resiliency solutions.
Great. And so now that we've already kind of started it off and kicked it off, Andy, why don't you tell us a little bit about Cobalt Iron, and then maybe we'll come back and ask you about the relationship that Cobalt Iron has with IBM. But first, start us off with
Perfect.
a little of Cobalt Iron.
Great. Yeah. So we've been around for about 8 years as a company. Our CEO and founder spent many years consulting for some of the largest companies in the world with some of the most complex data protection landscapes, and constantly had this thought that there's got to be a better way of doing this. We've got to be able to, streamline the process, take the human out to the extent possible, and deliver industry-leading cybersecurity. So Compass, which is our product name, the company name is Cobalt Iron, but the product name is Compass. Compass is a software as a service solution, meaning it's delivered with software, not with people. Obviously, we have people that build the code, but the actual solution itself is delivered via software. And we really kind of think about our pillars of expertise and differentiation being around the lines of cybersecurity. So something that's super relevant today in today's market. Every morning, I think we all wake up to hearing about the latest attack that probably could have been avoided or at least mitigated. I just heard just the other night that the White House has now elevated cybersecurity to the same level as terrorism, which, that puts a lot of pressure on enterprises to get things right. So cybersecurity is built at the core of our solution and it has been from day one. Next up, I would say, is operational simplicity. Being able to deliver the business outcomes and kind of take the human out to the extent possible. That doesn't mean removing humans entirely, but letting them focus on higher, more strategic type of activities as opposed to some of the mundane but necessary daily backup administrative tasks. We eliminate about 80% of those. I mentioned we are delivered as a service. And again, that's software as a service, and that's both from a commercial model, so you pay for what you use, so there isn't any over provisioning, which typically reduces the total cost of ownership. And in addition, from a technology perspective, we're also delivered as a service, meaning that we have one code base running worldwide. So every single one of our customers is running the same level of code and the most recent version of code. And then we are also very flexible in terms of our deployment models. So that could be something simplistic as data center to data center replication. You could have hundreds of remote sites, or you could integrate cross cloud or hybrid cloud environments. We do have integrations with other technology partners into cloud environments like AWS, Microsoft Azure, Alibaba Cloud, Google Cloud Platform, and of course, IBM Cloud. So, those are kind of the differentiations and kind of the key pillars of what Compass delivers. And, certainly we do this with IBM technology as well. And I look forward to talking about that a bit more.
It's going to be a good conversation, because when we take a spin on Randy's wheel of misfortune and talk about some of the cyber threats, we can point to Compass as the ability to help us out. But Sean and Trisha, from a field perspective and dealing with a lot of folks in the field, I mean, you guys must run into places where partnerships like these can really, really help IBM, right?
Oh, absolutely, especially when you get a company like Cobalt Iron that's been out there for a long time and has all this expertise embedded in them. But my question, Andy, was what type of customers do you work with? What size, what industry?
Yep, great question. So we do have customers that range from as small as a couple terabytes up to tens of petabytes. So we can kind of service the very small as well as the extremely large. But I would say that when we look at our ideal customer profile, what's really ideal for our solution, it's going to be the large enterprise. And because of that, because we are built on IBM technology with Spectrum Protect as one of our key technologies that delivers data protection, we all know that Spectrum Protect scales immensely, and that is one of the beauties of that technology. So when we look at kind of our ideal customer profile, it's really kind of the more complex, the larger, the more distributed the environment, the better for us. So if a customer has hundreds of remote locations, they have multiple data centers, and they also want to replicate into the cloud, and they have petabytes worth of data, that right there would be awesome. Doesn't mean we can't service a smaller, but that's kind of our sweet spot, if you will.
So it sounds like you provide the ability, among other things, to help a large enterprise that's dealing with massive volumes of data growth, and of course, an increased threat vulnerability to cyber attacks, that you can help them really automate and simplify and more efficiently manage and optimize those services by leveraging your kind of specific expertise in that space, which is sort of a force multiplier for them.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and again, kind of the beauty of what we do, which is different than a traditional managed service, is that we're delivering it with software. So, taking the human out of it is actually one of the key areas of cybersecurity. The less people that are touching the platform, the less people that have login credentials, the less people that have passwords that are stale, the better. So by removing 80% of operational complexity right then and there, one of the attack vectors at least is not eliminated, but certainly reduced. So yeah, you're absolutely right. That's key to our solution.
So is it just an ease? Is Compass just an ease of use solution for Spectrum Protect, or are there other components that are associated with it?
Great question. So your first question, is it just ease of use? Yes. So yes, that is a checkbox there. We do simplify the management of Spectrum Protect. We have one single unified dashboard that you can manage your entire backup infrastructure, whether or not that's in cloud environments, remote sites, data centers. It's one centralized UI. So yes, there is operational simplicity there. Our customers never log into a Spectrum Protect server or backup server again. That's just not part of the solution. So it does simplify that. But then our IP extends well beyond that as well. So the elements that I've talked about in terms of automation, taking the human out of it, the cyber security that we have, multiple patents around, unique integrations into cloud providers, offering a integrated BTL offering, which is software enabled within Compass. All these elements are additional IP that Compass delivers. So your question's a good one. It does simplify the Spectrum Protect environment, but we go well beyond that as well. We kind of have a tagline saying beyond backup.
So is it also the hardware that's associated with Protect, including the storage and all that other stuff?
Yeah, good question. So with our solution, we are delivered on what we call certified platforms. So our certified on-premise platform is going to be with Lenovo, and we have multiple different sizes: micro, small, medium, large, and enterprise grade solutions that are stamped out of their facilities and sent directly to the customer. So that is all manufactured by the Lenovo and stamped with our software. So that is from an on-premise perspective. We also have certified platforms for the top 5 public clouds. So again, Amazon Web Services, Microsoft Azure, Alibaba, IBM Cloud, and Google Cloud Platform. So all of those 5 platforms have certified platforms as well. And then from a storage perspective, our storage that we optimize and that we sell with our solution is flash systems. So another IBM technology, which is best of breed in the market. So not only do we use Spectrum Protect within our solution, but we also leverage flash systems for storage on-prem.
Yeah, and if you were using one of the cloud providers, I take it would be just their in-house.
That is correct. Yep, that is correct. So if you have, if you're running a cloud environment, we would have what we call our hardware is called an accelerator, and that accelerator would be a cloud accelerator, which is built, as certified by the platform itself, the cloud platform, and then writing to their storage. for a cloud environment. On-prem, we would be delivering a Lenovo accelerator on-prem, as well as flashes and storage.
And so as a Compass administrator, do I need to understand Spectrum Protect, or is it
not
hidden
at
from
all
me and I just need to understand your
It's hidden from you. You don't need to know Spectrum Protect at all. And as a matter of fact, good, bad, or indifferent, many of our customers don't even know Spectrum Protect is a part of their solution.
And what about when we bring out new features? Like, I know retention sets aren't that new, but let's just use that as a example. Would that be something you would wrap your interface around?
Absolutely. So as you deliver new versions of Spectrum Protect, we update our Compass software with it. So yes, we are absolutely, there's kind of two sides to that coin. So there is the new feature functionality coming from IBM with Spectrum Protect, which we will absolutely roll out and deploy. And then there is new feature functionality that is being deployed by us with the Compass platform. We typically do about one release a month. So our customers are not only on the latest version of code, but they're also getting the latest enhancements, whether or not that's performance enhancements, bug enhancements. It wouldn't be a bug enhancement. That would be the wrong word there. It'd be a bug, which is not an enhancement.
Like a bug enhancement.
Bug fixes. Let's use a bug fix instead of a bug enhancement. And then, any new feature functionality that we're delivering to the market. So, outside of a couple of corner cases where we do charge separately for unique features, 99% of all new feature functionality is a part of the platform, and all of our customers get it.
And how does Spectrum Protect Plus fit into that with container backups and things like that?
That's another. You guys are just full of great questions today. Spectrum Protect Plus, we're excited.
That's not all we're full of.
We're excited about where Plus is going. Actually, within our lab, we've had that. We've been integrated with Plus for many, many releases. And what I can tell you is that from our roadmap perspective, we do intend to release a couple of different features within Plus later this year. So there will be elements of Spectrum Protect Plus that are being deployed within the Compass platform in 2H of this year.
And you have been put on the hot seat more quickly than any guest I think we've ever had on here. So, but you're handling the rapid fire really well. So let's take just a feature function break for a second and help us understand kind of why you guys chose IBM to work with.
Yep. So boy, this probably dates back. Well, definitely dates back way before myself. But what I can tell you is that Spectrum Protect, we all know it, is the highest scaling data protection solution in the market today, end of story. And because of that, what we like to say is our competitors' ceiling of what they can support from a workload and scale perspective is the floor that we stand on. And that's because of Spectrum Protect to a certain degree, a large degree, I should say. So definitely best of breed technology within the data protection space. And that's, I guess, Steve, probably answer number one. Two is that IBM's been a fantastic partner of Cobalt Iron for many, many years, even dating before Cobalt Iron existed. There was a previous company that our CEO and founder had that was also very close with IBM, and you and IBM have been fantastic partners to us over the years.
That's great to hear, and I'm sure that our folks in the field will be pleased to know that that's kind of the feeling behind Cobalt Iron when we go in the field and we're partnering together and meeting up with customers. Tricia, I think you said you have found a tooltip. Do you want to share with us your tooltip?
Oh. This is the best part.
So I have found a tooltip for today. So today's official tooltip is about some of the great sessions you can log onto for our Tech Tuesday calls or for some of the Tech U virtual calls that have been put out. So the Tech Tuesday calls, there's a nice array of different products being featured and functions. So every Tuesday you can log on and hear a lot of great information, and the replays are out there. And then Tech U, this is not the traditional virtual Tech U that's all held in October or something. They're bringing out different calls and different technical pieces on a regular basis. So do check that out, either the replays or you can sign up and join live and ask questions. And we'll have those URLs in there for you to log on with.
Great to hear. And also, Andy, and I'm sure you know this, right? Being a partner with IBM, on those TechU sessions, we have business partners that also present and talk about our co-branded solutions or our solutions that where we're going to market together. So it's a great opportunity for business partners to kind of talk about how they complement the different things that IBM does in the field as well. So that's great.
Yeah, and to the extent possible, would love to participate in any of those upcoming events. I think that'd be a great opportunity. I think there's a great story to tell. And Steve, as you mentioned, I mean, this is truly complementary technology. That's the way that we look at it. Is some people say, "Are you competitive?" And the answer is not at all. It's 100% complementary.
I think one of the things that I really like about the solution and what it has to offer and what it brings to the table, and I think you said it before, is, all of the things that we're finding, at least I'm finding in the field, and I'd be happy to hear anybody else, is, the role of the data protection administrator. We've talked about that as a few times on the podcast, and how the needs of what data protection and data resilience has to do for a business to keep it up and running are just growing exponentially. All the things that you need to pay attention to and everything else, right? And at the same time, folks they just want it to work, right? And they don't want to have to think about it. But we know they got to stay current. They got to have the latest patches. They got to have, all the latest feature sets that are going to help them feel that they can support their constituents, right? And the nice thing that Cobalt Iron brings to this part of the table or this part of the world is the fact that they can help support a client do all of that and kind of take that heavy lifting and that burden off the shoulders of the IT person and let them kind of focus on the move forward. So,
no, I absolutely couldn't agree more, Steve. I mean, not only just the traditional administrative tasks are growing, but now, I mean, many of them are being asked to, what are you doing for cybersecurity? What are you doing to ensure that you can't be hacked? I mean, that's a pretty heavy ask. I mean that they weren't being asked a handful of years ago. So, I mean, in addition to the things that we do in terms of always making certain that software is current, the latest releases of code, the latest software patches, the latest security patches, all that is optimized and automated through Compass. But you're right. I mean, now they're being asked to do things that they weren't asked before, and they're being spread so thin that they're almost being set up to fail.
Yeah, agreed. So great solutioning and great overview. All right, Randy, I think it's your turn. Do we take a spin on the wheel of misfortune?
Yeah, I think we should. Although I think nowadays we have to kind of limit this segment to 5 minutes or less, or else we could spend the rest of the day talking about it because it's unfortunately becoming a little too popular. All right, so let's. I suppose we should pick cyber attacks or we could do ransomware. Let's do ransomware this week. And not surprisingly, the top of the list is it was recently reported that JBS, the world's largest meat packing company and supplier in the world, that the ransom they paid was $11 million. Now, obviously that's a huge price tag, and that's on the heels of the Colonial Pipeline, which they didn't publicly disclose, but it was presumed to be about $5 million. So, these are large companies, and of course that isn't necessarily going to, be an existential threat to their bottom line, but it's a non-trivial amount of money, and it's certainly not something that they want to be in the habit of doing. So, everything we talk about on here with regard to cyber resiliency and creating a hardened infrastructure to reduce the risk and mitigate the risk against these kind of cyber threats, is becoming increasingly important. There's also, as I think, Andy mentioned a little while ago, the U.S. government is now getting more actively involved by elevating or escalating the threat of cyber attack on the same level as kind of more traditional sort of terrorism and military threats. They are, I think people probably saw in the news, there was an open letter published by the White House encouraging private businesses and public businesses to be much more active, much more aggressive in hardening their infrastructure and adopting cyber resilience policies across the board. One of the challenges for these organizations, especially a large public company, for instance, is that if they are the victim of a cyber attack, they are reluctant to publicly disclose it. First of all, I mean, in many cases they have to, because there are SEC obligations and reporting requirements that they have to comply with. But it's not something they want to disclose because it's bad for their business. It affects their stock price and their market cap, and it costs them money, right? So they don't necessarily want to publicize it. However, I think the point that the White House and the government is trying to make is that this needs to be a public-private partnership. Like, this threat is big enough and pervasive enough that we need to work together to develop a set of solutions. So really something that we're going to see, developing and changing and adapting and shifting very rapidly in the coming, weeks and months. There was another quick thing I'll mention that it was also announced, I think, a couple of days ago that the DOJ, working with Homeland Security, was able to actually recover a portion of the ransom that was paid by the Colonial Pipeline from the Russian hacking consortium. So that was kind of an interesting counterinsurgency or counter strike. So, the battle lines are being drawn. Biden is meeting with Vladimir Putin this week, so and next week and over the weekend. So these issues are top of mind. They are absolutely on the mind of every enterprise, every company, big and small, every agency, every public and private sector entity. So, I think we're kind of on the front lines of that as we have these conversations. So they're super important, and partners like Cobalt Iron obviously are going to play a huge role in our response to the cyber threats that we're seeing. So we appreciate the partnership, and I guess I would say we look forward in the future to reducing the risk for our joint clients, which is becoming really, really important and very, very challenging.
Well, and I think it's almost a pity that we don't hear more stories about, gee, I was hit by this type of malware or ransom attack, but because I had Compass installed or Spectrum Protect in plain version installed, I didn't have to pay. We did this and this and this instead.
And I think that goes back to the issue of just disclosure and companies, willingness to discuss these kind of things publicly, because it really is, not great optics, obviously. So they're reluctant to do so. But I think you're right. I think if we could make it a more, I don't know if destigmatized is the right word, but make it more acceptable to talk about these things if you're a company. I mean, it's going to affect everybody at some time or another. That's just how pervasive it is. So there's no shame in saying, yes, it happened to us, and here's what we did to mitigate it. And by the way, this solution or this technology or this set of best practices helped us, minimize the risk or minimize the damage and disruption. So it's a good point.
Yeah, and just to hit on that a little bit, couldn't agree with you more, Trisha, but we actually have a mutual customer that was hit last fall with a Compass customer, and the outcome of that was that their data was protected. They were able to restore in a timely fashion. The sad part was that they were hit about 3 weeks later again, and the attacker said, "This time we're going after your backups." And the hacker said, unless you pay us X amount of money. And because of the way that Compass is deployed, with absolutely no internet connection, no ability to get to the backups themselves, our customer was able to say, "Go pound sand. We're not paying you, and you're not going to get to it." And they briefly attempted and then moved on. So it's one of those things that we would love to be able to tell publicly. We have done an anonymous blogging and editorial piece around it. So we are getting a little bit of traction, but yeah, you're right. I mean, I think Randy's right that there is a stigma around it, that you don't want to be that company that gets attacked. But I also agree that it's not a matter of if, it's a matter of when. I mean, everybody will at least be tried to be attacked. Whether or not they're successful or not is TBD.
See, I think we're well past that. I mean, we were to a point 5 years ago or 10 years ago where you'd go to a bank, for example, and they would have hardened systems and they try to attack large institutions. I think these days it's everybody. It is literally everybody is a target. It doesn't make any difference how big or small you are. You're a government entity, a private entity. This is a business in it for profit, and the more people they find to attack, it's a very scalable business, and they are scaling it up.
Yeah, and right especially now, in the era of cryptocurrency, which has just caused this to explode, because now, in theory, all of these transactions are untraceable and completely obfuscated. So it makes chain of custody and traceability and kind of the forensic analysis of these attacks much more difficult. So yeah, you're right, Sean. This is only going to increase. It's only going to get worse. So
we do.
And the worst part is it's just a matter of time before another brewery is attacked. So
that is the worst thing, right?
Yeah.
I mean, it is to the point that I talk with our support team quite often, and we are responding to one cyber incident response per week now at a minimum in customer service, right? So across the entire install base of Spectrum Protect, one of those companies is calling in once a week. And we've been fortunate enough to put out some of the best practices that the support team has helped us with, as far as, making sure you're backing up your LDAP server, making sure that you're using some sort of worm or immutable storage, trying to back up the tape, recovering to an isolated environment, taking advantage of the 3-2-1-1 backup methodology. All of those things are helpful. And when you practice those methods, you tend to be more successful. But they have responded to incidents that have taken them 3 months to help a client fully recover, all the way to, hey, it's taken us about a week, and we feel good that we got back really quickly. And to your point, Andy, we have that joint customer, and I know who they are, but they don't want to be mentioned, right? So Tricia, yeah, we wish we could, but they don't want to release any vulnerability. Almost to the point where I was actually on a call the other day, looking at some potential partnerships that IBM might want to have. And they say, hey, we back up SharePoint environments, but we're very careful about saying that's specifically what we do, because or we do cyber resilience for SharePoint, because if we're partnered and we're at that company, then someone knows that company has SharePoint, and that's an attack vector, right? Mm-hmm. So it's getting crazy what people will and won't say these days.
Yep.
Great. Well, Andy, I want to thank you very much for being on today's podcast, and team, thank you very much. And thanks for hitting Andy with all the right questions, and hopefully our field will be as prepared as we can possibly be. If you need any information beyond this podcast with what's going on with what IBM is doing with Cobalt Iron, please look into Seismic. There's a whole section in the data resilience side of Seismic that talks about our partnerships, and this podcast, along with another podcast we've done with one of their field professionals, who is field architects, who's helped us understand more about the depths of what Cobalt Iron can offer, along with papers we can give to customers as far as case studies, data sheets, and that sort of thing. So please look there to be able to share that with customers as we go forward. So I want to thank everybody. Thank you for your time today, and have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Andy.